Focus today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and of course, in the news is a lot about lawfare. What is it, how it goes about, and this president that has certainly been a victim of it in so many ways. And what happened at Mar-a-Lago with the raid. No president has ever had his personal residence raided like that. We are so honored today to have really a very special guest. Christina Bobb is with us. She's an attorney with in Washington, D.C., former TV host and author of Defiant, Inside Mar-a-Lago Raid, and the left's ongoing lawfare. There's a picture of the cover of the book. She began her legal career in the United States Marine Corps following her military service. She transitioned to private practice, and after the 2020 election, she joined President Donald J. Trump's legal team to focus on election integrity for the 2024 election. And during 2024 election cycle, she joined the Republican National Committee Election Integrity Section and Senior Counsel to ensure the Trump victory. She does have a website, ChristinaBobb, BOBB.com. And there's a picture of the landing page. Christina, such an honor to have you. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. Where are you? Where are you?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
Okay, good to see you. Boy, so much to talk to you, so little time. So, you were there.
Have me back. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, come on out to Oregon. We'll show you a good time.
I love that.
Okay, you were there at Mar-a-Lago during the raid. I can't even imagine. Tell us about that, and then we'll get into the details legally. But how did you process that?
It was a shock. I mean, I can't say more than that is what you would expect. Why on earth is this happening? So I was the custodian of records for the documents at Mar-a-Lago. And so I met with President Trump's defense team as well as the DOJ and the FBI prior to the raid, about 2 months before the raid. We had no idea this was coming. Nobody had any indication that there was really anything wrong. We had been incredibly cooperative. And so the book takes everybody through that. I give you the text messages, the emails, the timeline, all of that, everything that went down between that initial communication with them and then ultimately through the raid and all the horrible aftermath. But there was absolutely no reason for it. I don't believe they had probable cause. I think they basically lied to the judge, left a lot of information out when they asked the magistrate. The magistrate was also conflicted out. He had just weeks before said that he was conflicted and couldn't preside over a Donald Trump case because it was Trump v. Hillary, and he was a Hillary supporter, and he didn't think he could be unbiased. So this thing reached to high heaven from the beginning, and the story that the media told you and led you to believe that Donald Trump had somehow done something wrong and that this was appropriate is completely false.
Where were you during the raid?
I was, for the most part, they made me stand pretty much in the circle drive. I don't know if you've seen like the aerial shots of Mar-a-Lago, but you've got the main ballroom, and then you have kind of like a circle drive area, and then there's the smaller room off the side. I was out there and hanging out by the ballroom in the shade because they would not allow me inside. They would not allow me to view what they were doing. So I would have to communicate with them when they came to speak with me, not because I was there, while they were working on the documents.
How much of a personal violation was this?
Egregious. Absolutely egregious. Not just for Donald Trump. I mean, of course, for Donald Trump and the Trump family and everyone, that lives at Mar-a-Lago, it was horrible. But I can't help but feel that it was a violation of all of us because they have no respect, no regard for the Fourth Amendment, no respect for constitutional norms. And they basically were saying they were daring us, the American people, to try to thwart them, to try to stop their power, to try to overrule them, knowing that they were in control of the federal government. It was the most egregious affront to the American people I've ever seen. Upon
entry, did they present warrants or anything? Or do they just, the stories we hear, they come in, with guns and everything, but don't they have to present legal document that they're doing this?
They sure do, and they made me fight them for it. I was demanding a copy of the warrant at the beginning, and we had an argument in the beginning because they didn't want to show me the warrant. They ultimately did. Then they gave me a copy of it at the end when it was all over, but I had to fight them for it. They did not want to show me the warrant. They just wanted to roll up and do whatever they wanted and leave with no accountability whatsoever. So The amount of arrogance that they displayed was astonishing. Um, it was just criminal what they were doing.
And they were looking for what?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? There's a lot of speculation on that. All of it could be true. At the end of the day, they were looking for a reason to get rid of Donald Trump, whether it was the Crossfire Hurricane documents. I've heard very good rationale that that's what they were looking for, and that very well may be part of the case. But at the end of the day, what I know for certain is that it was a fishing expedition to try to get Donald Trump. And I think it's worth pointing out that a lot of people forget the original grand jury was in Washington, D.C. This Mar-a-Lago case was not originally in Florida. They didn't want to bring it in Florida. They wanted to bring it in Washington, D.C., where they knew they could get a conviction, where they could manufacture an outcome, and they could get rid of Donald Trump once and for all. And they couldn't even do that. They could not get a conviction. And so I take you through all that. I ended up, like, the whole thing, the lawfare that was thrown at all of us. President Trump obviously got the brunt of it, and he was the main show. But they came after everyday Americans. They came after me. I was investigated by anybody and everybody you could think of. Ultimately, for unrelated issues, getting indicted in the state of Arizona. Here's my mugshot, which that indictment has been thrown out, but still fighting the case. I mean, the amount of lawfare that they waged on normal everyday Americans that didn't make the media because they didn't want you to hear about it. And those cases are still open, by the way. People are crying right now saying, oh, well, Donald Trump shouldn't be prosecuting his political opponents because of this potential grand jury in Florida. They're still doing it. There's still about 60 of us who are currently in ongoing cases being prosecuted by Democrats for completely bogus charges. So if they want to say, stop, okay, you go first.
All right, before I leave Mar-a-Lago, what they seized, at the end of the day, did you, President Trump, have anything illegal inside Mar-a-Lago?
No, nothing whatsoever, which is why they had to move the grand jury to Florida, because they were hoping to bring like an espionage type charge, kind of like the Hillary Clinton email scandal. They wanted to bring something like that in Washington, D.C., and there was nothing illegal. So they ended up having to move the case down to Florida and say, oh, he wasn't supposed to have classified material, which also is not true and not in accordance with the law. The Presidential Records Act is very clear that Donald Trump was lawfully in possession of everything that he had. There was no illegal activity whatsoever. So they moved it to Florida and brought an obstruction of justice charge, basically saying that Donald Trump was obstructing their investigation that never should have been opened in the first place.
Some have said that this invasion at Mar-a-Lago was kind of like the anchoring point for the Trumps to go for re-election. Do you think so?
I don't know if it was the anchor, but it certainly helped. I mean, in the worst possible way. I think Americans saw it and said, this is horrible. I don't like this. And I do believe that was the beginning of some on the left to start thinking critically, going, you know what, maybe I don't like what the left is doing. So I definitely think that it had a large role in that. Whether it was the beginning or the anchor, I don't know, but it certainly played a large role.
Is there any possible restitution for this wrongdoing?
I hope so. I really hope so, because I was severely damaged by it, and I know a lot of other people. I have friends who lost their homes over it. It was really, really bad. And then the American people just having to go through it themselves. So I think this grand jury investigation in Florida that Pam Bondi is opening or starting, authorized, I think that's the beginning of it. And then we have to see what the evidence says and where it leads. But 100%, I mean, they hurt a lot of people. They hurt our nation. They hurt our reputation. They hurt the justice system. People are concerned that do we even have fair trials anymore? Do we have a fair justice system? That's a big question mark for a lot of people. So yeah, they absolutely need to pay for it.
Okay, it is for me as well, and I want to go there. But let me just ask you this. Now that the grand jury is being assembled, doesn't that change everything? Because grand juries' purpose and goal is different than just somebody filing a suit.
Yeah, 100%. This is criminal. It is a criminal investigation. The fact that they've opened a grand jury means that they have what they believe to be probable cause, and it will be for the grand jury to determine if there is probable cause to indict somebody. And then once they get an indictment, it's off to the races. You've got criminal cases. So grand jury is very, very serious. And the bar is very low, meaning it is not hard to get an indictment out of a grand jury. I know I was indicted, but the bar is very, very low. And so I expect this to go pretty quickly because I think they're eager to get to some criminal cases.
Is there a statute of limitations involved here?
There's almost always a statute of limitations. I don't think it's in effect here because it's an ongoing conspiracy. I mean, it's the conspiracy that they originally started in 2016 that went through, the Russia hoax, the Mueller report, the Ukraine hoax, the Ukraine impeachment, then on to January 6th. I mean, it's ongoing. The January 6th hoax didn't even end until the end of 2024 after Donald Trump got elected a second time because Jack Smith was still playing with it. So they have not stopped. So, no, I don't think there's an issue with statute of limitations at all.
As you look back on this, who were the main players that called for this invasion?
Well, that's something that Kash Patel will have to reveal because I don't have the emails, but I know that there were people that were involved in the Russia hoax. There were people that were involved in all the way back from Paul Manafort's prosecution way back when. Some of the same people were involved. And so I don't want to, accuse anybody of anything without the FBI or DOJ doing it first. But I do suspect to see some of the same players that were involved in the original Russia collusion type situation while Barack Obama was still in office. Some of those folks I met with at Mar-a-Lago. Some of those folks were involved in the raid. So they should be nervous.
One other quick question, Christina, before I take a break. What does it say to you when this president has been attacked at every level,
Yeah.
from a bullet to Mar-a-Lago to injunctions everywhere? I mean, you know the list. And he's still standing, and he got reelected. What does that what does that tell you?
It tells me a few things. Certainly that the American people want change. This is the move of the American people, but clearly I think he's got divine protection. I don't know how anyone gets shot in the head and survives and becomes president. And my own little story, I see, I feel like I was divinely protected because in the course of 3 years, I had 9 legal cases against me in one way or another in 3 short years, and I have survived all of them. I'm still waiting for Arizona to close out, but it will. I don't see any other way than the hand of God.
I understand that, and I was going to ask you how your faith sustains you, and you can answer that. But has the divine intervention in protecting President Trump from a bullet changed him?
I don't know how it wouldn't. Yeah, I think it's very humbling. And I think President Trump absolutely, he has acknowledged that it caused him to do some real serious reflecting. And I think it solidified for him that he was on the right path, that he needed to do this, that he's called to do this. So, yeah, I think it was very moving for him.
Do you sense not only this divine protection, but do you sense a divine purpose in what you're doing?
I hope so. Like most people, I'm trying. I can't guarantee I'm getting it right, but I think so. I do my best to try to follow the right purpose and figure out what the Lord has planned for me. And I absolutely use my faith and pray and try to do exactly what God has ordained for me. I hope I get it right. I think I get it right. The fact that I'm still standing leads me to believe I got at least part of it right. But I want to be very careful not to say that God has called me to do exactly this, because I think if most of us are honest, we're not always right.
Right.
So I'm trying. I can say that.
That's a beautiful answer. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, I got to take a quick break. Check out our book. It's called Defiant: Inside Mar-a-Lago and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. There's a picture of the book, Christina Bobb, and then she has a website, ChristinaBobb.com, and there's a picture of her landing page. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. What an honor to have with us Christina Bobb. She's an attorney there in Washington, D.C., former TV host, and the author of a fascinating read, Defiant, Inside Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. There's a picture of the cover of the book. She was there at Mar-a-Lago. She's worked with President Trump. Her background is amazing, and she herself is fighting off lawfare and slowly winning. She does have a website, ChristinaBobb.com, and there's a picture of the landing page. Christina, again, thank you for your time. This is so fascinating. I'm kind of curious, given your experience and your background, there's something that's happening in addition to lawfare that really concerns me, and that is the cynical attitude that we have, oh, well, they'll never be held accountable.
Yeah.
Look, I understand that could be hidden in red, blue versus blue, left and right. I understand all that. But really what's at stake here is the integrity of our law. If somebody is not held accountable and, oh, well, they'll never be caught or they'll never serve time, where does that leave your profession?
Yeah, no, my profession is in dire straits at the moment. I make no qualms about that. But no, if I may be so bold, I would say that's a really lazy attitude from many Americans. And most of the Americans that I talk to, and I worked for President Trump's campaign, I worked at the RNC, I traveled all over the country, I talked to folks all over in every state, talked to grassroots on the ground. So I've talked to a lot of Americans about what's happening. And the ones that I see who say that, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it, most of them aren't trying to do anything about it anyway. The people that I talk to that are working really hard, that are knocking on doors and signing petitions and emailing their senators and emailing their legislators and calling their governors and trying to make a difference, they don't say that. And so, I want to be careful, not trying to offend any viewers, but ask yourself, if that's the way you feel about it, ask yourself, have you tried anything? Have you tried to make a difference? Mm-hmm. And if you can't honestly point to something saying that you've tried and, oh, it doesn't do any good, okay, well, then sit and watch the rest of us work at it. But I think it's a lazy attitude. I also think the Lord can save by many or by few, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're scared and want to go home, just like the story of Gideon, then go home. But don't pretend like it can't happen.
Yeah, the seriousness of what's being investigated now, even some of it that has gone on to a grand jury, is the old saying is a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. So as serious as these crimes are, you would think there's going to be some charges here, and it could mean big-name people, but they shouldn't be excused because they're big-name people.
I think that's the point of the grand jury. I don't expect them to go after the little guys. I think they expect them to go after the people who coordinated this and started this from the beginning. So, yeah, I do expect to see some indictments come down relatively quickly. I mean, like in a matter of months. This isn't going to be a grand jury that sits around for 2 years, and then doesn't really do anything. I think they have what they need to get the indictments that they want and then move forward with the prosecution. And I do expect it to be the folks at the top, the Hillary Clintons, the Barack Obama. I don't have the evidence. They have the evidence. So I don't want to accuse anybody before we see what happens. But I think I expect them to be some really big names.
As a former member of the RNC myself, not anymore, but I was state chairman for quite a few years. But here's the deal. Do you think the RNC is prepared for this next election cycle, not only midterm, but in 2028?
For 2026, yes. I think it's a battle for a myriad of reasons, but yes. For 2028, I think so much depends on what happens in Donald Trump's term. And I think the court system is crucial. I mean, that's the crux of it. That's what President Trump needs to clean out. And he cleans it out by prosecuting the people who are abusing it. And if that doesn't happen, we've seen it. And, we saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2016. They run to the courts. And now that's really their biggest ally that they have for those that want to disrupt the election and those that want to cause problems, is they run to these liberal courts and here in Washington, D.C. or wherever, and they get these orders that affect the entire nation. Thankfully, the Supreme Court has limited that to a great extent, but they're abusing the court system. And so if President Trump can't get that sorted out in his term, I think 2028 is going to be rough.
Okay. That also go back to something you've worked on, and that's election integrity.
Mm-hmm.
How integrity is our election system?
Especially in Oregon. I don't know if you're tracking it in Oregon, but Oregon's rough.
Yeah. No, I mean, so what do we do with this? I mean, we have vote by mail. I mean, it's just a open.
Well, that's the problem. I think vote by mail is the biggest issue. I know everyone complains about the machines, and there may be problems with the machines. I can't say one way or another. I'm not a technical expert. But the obvious problem is the mail-in ballots and the ballot stuffing. I mean, there's little to no chain of custody, and it's a very serious problem. Actually, I have an interesting fact for you about Oregon. So Oregon became a state. The first presidential election that Oregon voted in was Abraham Lincoln back in 1860. And from Abraham Lincoln until they instituted mail-in ballots in 1987, so the entire existence of the state of Oregon, from Abraham Lincoln until 1987, when you switched over to mail-in ballots, you had only voted for 4 Democrat presidents. A couple of them multiple times, but there were only 4 Democrat presidents that the state of Oregon voted for in any election. And then after you instituted mail-in ballots, a Republican has never won the state.
That's an amazing statistic.
It's crazy. There's a website for it. You can see the graph. It's bananas.
Why haven't some of these bad attorneys not been disbarred?
Because they're too busy disbarring the good ones. That's a very serious problem we have. I was subject to a bar investigation. They threatened to take my license. Thankfully, they didn't. I was found to have no misconduct, which again, I believe is the grace of God. But we have a very serious problem within the legal community, whether it's the American Bar Association or all of these state bars. They have become political arms, and Democrats have really weaponized these bar associations. And so liberals can get away with bringing fake charges. They can do whatever they want with impunity, but conservatives are getting disbarred when they have immunity from it. So Jeff Clark, I don't know if you've heard this, but Jeff Clark, just a few weeks ago, I think it was less than a month ago, Jeff Clark, who was the DOJ official who was supporting Donald Trump while Donald Trump was president, and conversing with him about the problem that was going on with the 2020 election between November and January 6th. Jeff Clark was the senior advisor because Bill Barr, the attorney general, had basically abandoned ship and wasn't doing anything. So Jeff Clark was then the most senior official who was advising the president on law enforcement procedures. They just disbarred him for that like a month ago. And the Supreme Court ruling in the Trump case said that any DOJ official is immune from prosecution because of it's basically an executive privilege. It's an immunity because they have the right to be discussing these things to make sure they get to the right conclusion. And the DC bar didn't care. They were just like, yeah, well, we're going to disbar him anyway. And they did.
Can that be challenged?
Yeah, but he's got to hope that the Supreme Court takes it. He can go through the Court of Appeals, which is going to support the D.C. bar. And then after that, because it's D.C., you have to go to the Supreme Court. Is the United States Supreme Court going to worry about his bar claim? I don't know.
Is this lawfare starting to fall apart, or is it just in a low moment?
I think it's both. I think they're using it's the biggest weapon and probably the only real weapon that they have right now. They still have the media a little bit, but thanks to alternative sources, people can get information other places. So the media is not as big of a weapon as it used to be for them. So they're really relying on the courts. So they're using it heavily. It's also being abused, and people are recognizing that it's being abused. So it's kind of falling apart. They're trying to save it. And I don't know which way it's going to fall. You know, I hope that we're able to recover it. I think so much of it depends on what Pam Bondi does in Florida. But that's kind of what we're waiting to see. You know, the bread is falling, and we're waiting to see if it lands jelly side up or not. I don't know. We'll watch.
So far, everything that's been thrown at the president hasn't stuck. When it gets to up to the Court of Appeals, he slowly wins these things. He's also a guy that if he hits you, or if you hit him, he's going to hit you harder. I don't know if he owns his own law firm and you're a part of it, but it's amazing to me that he can respond.
He kind of did, not really, but like he should.
But I mean, he can respond with legal challenges so quickly, and that's probably one reason why he's done so well. But I was really taken by what happened to him in New York. They came at him with every legal level possible, and none of it stuck. What does that tell you?
Right. Well, it tells you that the system is rigged. And that's, unfortunately, to the point that you were making earlier, that's the problem, is now Americans are concerned that we can't go to court and get justice, whether we're the defendant or the plaintiff. How do we get justice? And so the courts have been exposed as being unfair. And I look at the Supreme Court saying, ultimately, you're responsible for this, Supreme Court and Chief Justice Roberts. You're responsible for the courts below you. Get them in line. And they're doing it a little bit. I'd like them to be a little heavier handed, but they're not.
Okay. One other quick legal question, Christina, and that is, as you know, these rogue district judges have been throwing all kinds of injunctions at the president, and they immediately get appealed to the appellate court, and then they get overturned. And then the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, you got to stick closer to your district. But they're still doing it.
Yeah.
Still doing it. So it hasn't been re-challenged to the Supreme Court level. Do you expect Congress someday to redefine a district court's authority?
God, there's so much Congress needs to do that they're not doing. So they should, yes. I'm hopeful that once we get through this, if we get through this successfully, then yeah, I think that will happen. I would also like to see Congress impeach some of these judges, because these judges shouldn't be allowed to sit on the bench when they're acting this way. But you need, 66%, 2/3 majority to convict in an impeachment. So that's unlikely unless or until we actually get a bigger percentage in the House and Senate. But yeah, it needs to happen.
Because what's so interesting here is even Supreme Court rulings that have come out that would say don't allow a district judge to do what they're doing, and yet they violated it. Not to give away money to students and student loans, and they violated it. I guess the question is, when you violate the Supreme Court, why doesn't the Supreme Court stand up and do something?
Well, that's a really good question. And part of the Supreme Court's problem is they have been tiptoeing around. They're getting better at it, but they were tiptoeing around for a while and kind of kowtowing to what the established political class wants. Don't forget, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, also defied the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that Texas wasn't allowed to defend its own border, and that had to be federal jurisdiction. And Greg Abbott said, I don't care, I'm defending my state. And he did it anyway, and nothing happened. So it's not only the Democrats, it's largely the Democrats that are defying the Supreme Court, but unfortunately it's falling to Republicans to have to do the same thing. So the Supreme Court needs to grow a spine and issue some serious rulings and issue some guidance and try to get the lower courts in order. And if they don't, we're in trouble. Everything is hanging by a thread right now, and a lot of it is the Supreme Court that's holding that thread. So they should grow a spine, but I think they're all scared. They're all judges that want to be liked, and they don't want to be ridiculed in the media, and they're scared.
Christina, you're inspiring. Thank you. Can we get you back sometime?
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
All right, let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out her book. It's called Defiant, Inside Mar-a-Lago's Raid, and then also the left's ongoing lawfare. There's a picture of the cover of the book there with Christina Bobb, and then that's also her website, ChristinaBobb.com. God bless you. Thank you for your resilience, steadfastness. Look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
God bless.